Welcome to GiSTEMChats. This is our look into computer science. I am Deja Shabazz. I am the head of technology and the secretary for GiSTEM. Today, I'm just going to start off by giving you a little information about GiSTEM, and we'll keep moving forward. GiSTEM is a nonprofit, tax-exempt charitable organization under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. GiSTEM goal is to be an advocate for girls' interest in the academic discipline that can be challenging due to lack of resources in public school systems. We share the fundamental skills needed for girls to be prepared and successful in STEM. GiSTEM's mission is to influence and inspire girls to thrive in academic disciplines and careers in which the gender gap persists, to help impact their minds, their futures, and our STEM community. And we can't forget about our vision. GiSTEM's vision is to instill confidence, determination, critical thinking, and teamwork while molding the minds of girls at the most vulnerable age of learning. This will give them the needed advantages and resources to direct them to the most effective path toward success in STEM. So today, for our look into computer science, we're so happy to have Jasmine here with us. So thank you for being here, Jasmine.
Hi.
I'm going to go ahead and read your bio, then we're just rolling to the questions. Jasmine Clancy has been testing software professionally for 3 years now. Before she became a QA test engineer, she studied for a degree of computer science at the University of Auckland, which took her 5 years to complete. In conjunction with her career, she is also a mother and strongly believes in having a good work-life balance. So again, welcome and thank you for being here. And I'll do a brief explanation of GiSTEMchat, which is our 30 to 60 minute segment throughout the year where professionals like yourself share their STEM community journey, their STEM career journey, including their career roles, aspirations, success, and challenges faced in their career paths. Okay, so Jasmine, thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy to have you. And I know
thank you for having me.
Happy to have you.
It's very exciting to be here.
Awesome. So let's start with some questions for you. What is computer science and what made you pursue it?
Yeah, these are good questions. Computer science as a whole is quite broad. So during the course of my degree, I covered probably what most people would think of, which is coding, and kind of writing the code and running it and sort of debugging and all those things. But as well as that, I also covered quite a bit of, there was user testing involved in there. There was quite a bit of like cyber security related stuff. Fair amount of the history of computer science, kind of like right back from when the first computers were being developed and the coding languages there. So I've learned some really archaic coding languages and kind of written a few things in those, which was fun, but also gives me so much thankfulness for code the way that we have it now. It's just so much easier. It also it kind of covers just the idea of kind of computers in general, which is sort of where the history of computer science ties into it, but mostly what I gravitated towards was the testing side of things. So I tried to do a few more papers on that. I also did a bit of machine learning as well. And as to what made me pursue it, it was kind of an idea that was bubbling up, especially during, as part of my university education, I did a year-long course that would get me what is essentially considered university entrance, although I did it at the university. And right at the end of that course was when I first started thinking, hey, you know, I've always wanted to know a little bit more about this. Now I've got this confidence from seeing how well I was doing in the course. And I just kind of went, you know what, I can do anything. I'm going to kind of go out on a bit of a limb and do something that I'm interested in, but I literally know nothing about. I've never even written like a line of code before. So I really just kind of decided to dip my toe in the water with a first year paper and absolutely loved it. And that was the beginning of my journey.
Awesome. I love that. And I love that you just jumped into it, even though you didn't feel as confident, didn't know. So that's great. I think I felt the same way about you. I think I started with coding and I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Great.
I have to say, writing that first line of code, which is the very well-known, just sort of like print hello world, and just seeing it appear and going, oh my goodness, I pressed a button, I wrote those things, and this is happening. And it seems like such simple stuff now, but at the time it felt like magic. It was just like, I'm doing all of this, and it is so exciting.
No, I definitely understand. It's like, look what I can do. You guys come look at this. Okay, where do you reside, and what was it like pursuing computer science in a different country or in your area?
Yeah, so I did my my degree at the University of Auckland, which is in New Zealand. So I've spent pretty much my whole life in Auckland, and I went to the same university that my dad went to and my grandpa went to. So we've sort of been in the family in the area for quite a while. It was quite interesting doing a degree there. I spoke with quite a few people who'd come from overseas, and just hearing how their universities set up degrees was also really interesting. The main thing that I kind of experienced was the way that the university was set up was very much science is sort of here and arts is over here, and engineering has its own thing, and there's like health science and stuff like that. So I was finding that in my degree, to get a degree of computer science, you've got to do a set number of papers directly related to computer science. You've got to do 2 electives outside of the science sector. So I did accounting and philosophy for that, just trying to expand a little bit more. And then I was kind of at the point where I went, right, so I've sort of like done all of the stage 1, all of the stage 2 computer science papers that are available. And I've also got quite a keen interest in history. So I found that there was quite a divide between arts and sciences. So really I could only do 2 history papers and have that count towards my degree. But I was a bit naughty and I did 2 extra history papers that don't count towards my degree. So there was like an element of struggle, just sort of being like really interested in such a range of things. But in the end, I chose mostly stuff that was within the science sector. So it was like maths, physics. Within physics, I did quite a lot of stuff related to outer space and that sort of thing.
Nice.
And then there was a paper that I really enjoyed, which was to do with archaeology. And one of my favorite parts was just having pieces of ancient like pottery or spearheads and stuff like that passed around the class, and they were like, be careful, they are sharp, don't break them on yourself.
That sounds amazing.
This would never happen in any other area. So while I was focusing majorly on computer science, the way that the university is set up is really to encourage people to try things outside of their major, but within science. And then I was a little bit naughty and I did things in arts as well because I wanted to.
Okay. A little bit of everything. You seem like you just loved so much, and it was kind of a fight between computer science and history a little bit.
There was, because I knew that going into university, and I said that I only really made my decision of doing computer science like right at the last minute, essentially, because I kind of got that confidence of I can do this. But up until that point, I'd been kind of considering, do I want to do creative writing at university? And I decided I'm not quite ready for that. Because it's definitely something that's on the line for me at some point, is to finish one of my books and actually get that published and that sort of thing. But I thought at that point in my life, I wasn't ready for that. With history, I absolutely love the knowledge, but it's one of those things that I couldn't really see myself doing for the next few decades. It's like something I just love learning, but I wasn't sure what I would do with it. And then with computer science, I was like, yes, I can see myself doing this.
It was just the perfect fit.
So interesting. Yeah.
And it's always changing, and you can learn so much more as you grow.
Absolutely. And I didn't want to sort of confine myself just to one area. I was like, I'm just going to kind of like pick from my interests and make it work.
Okay, nice. Let's talk about your current, where you work currently and your current role.
Yep. So I currently work at ActionStep, which is a place that deals with software for lawyers. My current role is a QA test engineer. So I get things that developers have been working on. So if you kind of imagine that all the coding kind of goes off in the background, and then once it's done and it's working, then it comes to me, and I sit myself down as a customer, sort of in the customer's shoes, and I can do one of two things. One of that is manual testing, where I'll click through and I'll have a list of test cases that just kind of go, these are things that a real life user are likely to do, and some things that a real life user might do that they're not supposed to do, but they might do it anyway.
Exactly.
Who hasn't just sort of clicked a few random things when you're trying to get something to work? And so I'll try all of those things, and my main objective is to find, hey, this is unexpected, or this is a bit weird, or just kind of question things that don't look right before they go out for real people to see, because that's the whole point of kind of like quality assurance, is just making sure that what we're giving to people is what they want to see and something that they're comfortable using. The other part of that is automation, which is really fun. It's where I get to sit down and write code, and the code gets to be the user. So I get the code to kind of run through the system, and it will either be through the user interface, which is what customers will see, or it will be through API, and kind of like pull that data without going to any scene screen. And that's a lot of fun. It's one of my kind of guilty pleasures, is just sort of staying in the office late on one day a week just to kind of work on it in my zone. So the automation is one of my favorite parts of my job.
With that automation, is that a code that you create yourself, or is just something that's on hand that you guys can use?
Yeah, so we're using the coding language C# in the Selenium framework. So these might just be words I'm sort of throwing out, but essentially we're kind of following a framework and then writing the code within those guidelines.
Oh, okay. C# is actually something I do know. That's what I had.
Amazing.
So I'm like, oh yeah, that's great.
It's always kind of hitting that balance between like throwing out those like really cool words like selenium and like this and that, and actually thinking, hang on a second, I'm coming from the background of knowing what these things are. Does everyone know? Is everyone kind of in the same boat here?
How long have you been in your role, and how has it changed since you started working there?
Yeah, so at ActionStep, I've been working here for about 1 year and just under 3 months. When I first started, I was still pretty junior. I was in the junior role. I had about 1.5 years of prior experience with cinema software. So when I first came to the role, it was a lot of sort of learning. It's quite a big product. So my role was basically just absorb all the knowledge, learn all the things, learn what it's like to be a lawyer in the system as opposed to a cinema person. And I'd say for the first kind of 3 months or so, it was just so much of learn this, learn that, ask all the questions, learn all the things. In my previous role, we didn't do a whole lot of automation either. So there was a lot of just learning the groundwork, reminding myself of some of the stuff that I'd learned during my degree, and kind of getting to the point where that knowledge was in such a way that it was applicable to my job. And now the way that it's kind of changed is I've gone from being a junior to I'm now an intermediate, which means that I feel like I can kind of say things and be confident that I know what I'm talking about to an extent. It also means that my automation knowledge has kind of got to the point where I can sit by myself, and when I kind of come up to issues, I'll ask for help, but I don't really need someone sitting beside me saying, hey, can I now do this? And then this is the next thing, watch out for this, and all those things. So it's just a lot more confidence in my role.
Oh, wow, that's great. So with the role, is it knowing the software and the code, and they have to go just hand in hand, or can you do just the code by itself and just not worry about really learning the software?
Yeah, so a lot of what I do is what we call black box testing, which is testing sort of within bounds, but we don't know what code has sort of led to that point. And that's especially for manual testing. It's very rare that I get to see the code that the developers have kind of written and that sort of thing, but often I'll ask them and I'll say, how is this supposed to be behaving? Because there can be moments where it's just good to confirm and clarify and just say, this seems like it could be okay, but it also seems like maybe it's not the intention. Let's just kind of like get everything out like in the open so we know how it's supposed to be working. But often I don't see the actual code of the application. It's only the automation code that I really see.
Okay, nice. What has been your path leading to this role, and what did your background look like?
This is going to be an interesting one. So yeah, I was homeschooled all the way through. And so part of the reason why I was talking about that kind of confidence that I gained from that year-long university entrance course is because I only really had myself and my two brothers to kind of compare myself to. And I knew that in comparison to them, my strengths were my kind of interests, which were like creative writing, English lit, history, that sort of thing. But I was also really, really interested in maths and physics and chemistry. And I also did a bit of biology as well for my IGCSEs. And kind of having that realization that we've got my brother who's kind of like the middle brother. I'm the eldest, and the middle brother, he's exceptionally good at maths. He's the kind of person who you can say, how do I work this thing out? And if it's high school maths, he'll just say, I've thought up a formula, I've thought up the answer, I've got it all in my head, and here is your answer. And I'd still be kind of figuring out what formula I needed. So kind of having that experience of doing that year-long course to get my university entrance, I came 5th in the maths class, and I realized, hey, I'm not bad at maths. My brother's exceptionally good at maths. So that was kind of like the start of my journey, is just kind of realizing I don't have to stick to what I'm comfortable with or confident with. I can take this kind of knowledge of how I fit compared with like all the other grades and stuff like that, and I can apply that wherever I want. And I initially thought maybe I'll get into engineering and do computer, what's it called? It's called software engineering. There we go. Because my uncle did that. My uncle's about 10 years older than I am, and seeing what he was doing at university and kind of like working with the soldering iron and stuff like that, I can remember at 12 thinking, oh my gosh, I want to do that. And I've always been pulling stuff apart, maybe putting it back together like half the time.
It just depends.
Yeah. So I'd say my journey up to that point was very much kind of like learning that I don't have to stick to what I want to do. I also had some considerations when I started that year-long course to get my UE. I had a son 8 months. And there was kind of that consideration of, hey, whatever I choose for my university career should be something that I'm both really passionate about and that I can see myself supporting my family on. So there was a lot of thinking, but the major thing came down to just talking to the right people, getting that confidence that I don't have to stick with what I know, and then just kind of deciding. It was about 4 months before the course started, I just decided, hey, I'm going to put in an application for science. And I was thinking I might start with a year of science and then go to engineering. But I did computer science in that first semester. And as I mentioned, as soon as I did that course, I just absolutely loved it. And I was like, this is for me.
Oh, that was great that it was such a good fit. And I was basically homeschooled in a very small private school growing up as well. So I'm so happy. Yeah, that's so great. So just seeing your uncle with his degree really got you interested in STEM. to begin with, or do you think there was
Yeah,
something?
I would say that was the moment where I really decided that that's where I wanted to do something tech related.
Mhm.
And I'd say that I've always had the kind of two major interests, which one is writing and the
Okay.
other is technology. And I was very, very well aware, sort of going into university, that writing isn't really something, if you're kind of like taking a typical route, it's not really something that you can kind of like go out and write a book and then suddenly you're getting like book deals left, right, and center. It's like you've got to write about 6 books before you really get into it, and
Oh,
then you can
wow.
kind of maybe start to expand.
Uh-huh.
So while that was a big interest of mine, it's such a slow thing, and I can absolutely see myself being a book author, but like when I'm 50 or 60, it's not really something I think I can do right this second.
Uh-huh.
And then the whole interest in tech, that was something that was like a right now, this is possible, I can go into this. Seeing my uncle do it was definitely, when I was 12, that first moment of going, I want to be just like my uncle. I want to
Oh,
like solder things. I want to build things. He was doing software for video games.
wow.
And so I'd go over and he'd say, oh, look at this part in the video game. I worked on that. And I was just
Uh-huh.
like, he's the coolest person I know.
That sounds like it. Wow.
Yeah. And of course, like, given that there's only about 10 years difference between us,
Uh-huh.
he's still kind of like young enough that I was like, this person's cool, this person's like learning all these things. And there was all that energy of kind of a person who's learning something for the first time that I was hearing being relayed back to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also hearing like my dad and his friends talk about just coding concepts, even though I understood absolutely nothing,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of definitely planted all those seeds of, this is something that I've heard about, I don't really know how to do, but I find it really interesting. So it's definitely something that took quite a few years to sort of get to that point. And then someone just kind of mentioned on a whim, hey, have you considered trying engineering? And I went, you know what? I actually want to do that. And I
Uh-huh.
hadn't really considered it for myself up until that point. And then when the person said that, I was like, why am I holding myself back from something that I want to do? Let's just
Exactly.
do it.
I'm so glad you went for it and you're succeeding at it. So that is
Yes.
wonderful.
Even though it's like the path that I took wasn't the path that I thought that I would take. It's
Mhm.
kind of like I tried a few things and then I just came across computer science and I was like, this.
Uh,
This is, and I switched my major. I was initially trying to get into engineering to do software engineering. It's still
uh-huh.
software, but not computer science.
Yeah.
Slight differences, but when it came down to it, very, very similar in terms of application.
Okay, nice. Sometimes it takes a few tries to find out what you really want.
100%. And that's absolutely fine. It's actually quite a lot of fun.
That's good. That's so great. Let's probably get in one more question before we take a short break.
Sure.
Can you give us an example of a challenge that you have overcome in your career and any success that you can share?
That is a tricky one. I would say this is very like niche to me, is probably the fact that I was raising a child by
Mhm.
myself. I had a lot of family help, but it's kind of like not like the typical family situation. It was
Mhm.
myself and my son for a lot of university. And then of course like family help for picking
Uh-huh.
up from like um, it was before after school care, it was kind of like, I've forgotten the word. It's like the preschool care, and kind of
Uh-huh.
like pickups and drop-offs and just making sure that I could get to my classes and stuff on time. But I'd say one of the biggest challenges is kind of that balance between, these are all the things that I'm interested in. It was, and I
Mhm.
would have loved to have taken a conjoint with and combined a history degree with my computer science degree, but sort of
Uh-huh.
looking at that time frame and going, I don't think I've actually got enough time to do that right now.
Oh, uh-huh.
So I'll just prioritize what I need to do for the path that I can see for myself in the future. and then going into full-time work. And there was also still that kind of juggle between like, now there's school pickups and drop-offs, and it hasn't been a struggle that's kind of like specific to the to computer science in and of itself. It's more just kind of like what's what I'm after? The way that the job is set up, and the way the like things that I'm concentrating on and stuff like that, and balancing a family with that isn't really something that people talk about a lot, but I'd say it's probably been my main challenge. And it's actually been something that post like the start of the pandemic, everything has sort of become a little bit more flexible, and they've been like, hey, people can work from home, they can leave early and finish from home, and all of those things. And that has been so helpful, just from being kind of like a working parent.
Okay. Are you working in an office at all right now, or are you just completely doing from home?
It's all from home. I do have the option to go into the office, and I probably will go into the office full-time next year.
Okay.
But at the moment, we've got a little bit of COVID and stuff going around, so most offices have sort of closed down, although I can go in if I wanted to. But it's just so nice to have the option to be home and oversee my son's schooling at the same time.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Jasmine. We're going to do a quick little break, and then we'll get back into round 2 of questions.
Okie dokie.
Okay, and we're going to take a quick little break to explain our upcoming summer program for next year, GiSTEM Week. GiSTEM Week 2022 will be Girls Revolutionize. This is our summer program that happens on a yearly basis. Next year, we will be having it from July 11th to July 15th. For 2022, this is a virtual event, so no matter where your girls are, have them apply so they can be a part of GiSTEM Week, which is a great program for the week in the summer. And again, GiSTEM Inc. is a nonprofit tax-exempt charitable organization under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. More about GiSTEM Week. Throughout our July 11th through July 15th program, we do have a presentation date that would be July the 16th. And this is the date where our girls do present their projects that they have been working on throughout the whole week of GiSTEM. During the week, we focus on one STEM subject and business subject per day. Each subject focused day will have a professional from the field discuss their career journey, including their roles at their respective companies and any challenges and advice to help the participants in their own journey. Participants will be exposed to hands-on activities and real-world problems to teach fundamental STEM and business skills. The skills will involve group projects that allow the participants to create and present their innovative solution to their guardians, GiSTEM volunteers, and sponsors at the end of the week. We'll be accepting 16 girls, rising 7th to 12th graders into the program. Our GiSTEM Week 2020 applications are out now, so just be sure to apply for that. And again, it is virtual, so you just don't have to be in Richmond, Virginia. You can be anywhere and apply and just enjoy the fun for next year. Okay, Jasmine, you ready to get into some more questions?
All right, let's do it.
Let's see. At GiSTEM, our mantra is to instill confidence, influence critical thinking, and inspire the next generation of women in STEM. By doing this, our goal is to increase the diversity of girls in the future STEM and other professional careers where their technical skills can be applied. Why do you believe it's important for girls to be at the table or take on roles in computer science?
I think to me, it's such a no-brainer to be able to give people with the passion for a topic or a subject the table to actually kind of explore it and learn a bit more about it. I think it's so important that that kind of thinking of, hey, I can do this. Like, as I spoke earlier, I had that revelation of, I don't have to hold myself back from doing this. I can just do this thing that I've always been interested in, but I'm a little bit afraid of because it's just kind of like that confidence that can I actually do this? What if I'm making a mistake? And I think it's so important to kind of build people up and say, hey, look at all these other things you can do that are related. Look at how amazing it is that you can do it. Because I think if we don't, then we end up missing out on a whole range of like different ways of thinking, different kind of experiences growing up, different sort of social pressures as well. And I think it's really important to have all of those inputs because we've got a whole lot of smart young girls and women out there who just really are waiting to shine. And B, it doesn't make sense to kind of limit all of the experiences and voices that we hear. And that's just, to me, it seems like such a no-brainer to say, hey, you are a rising star, let's give you a table to talk. It might be difficult to get to this point, but I can 100% see that you'll get there given your past challenges that you've overcome.
Nice, that's so wonderful. Thank you, Jasmine. What is your advice to young girls that are interested in pursuing technical roles?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that helped me was to find other people who knew about it. So growing up, that was my uncle. My dad knew a little bit about kind of coding and that side of computer science. And pretty much, I'd say pretty much every event that I've been to, there's been someone who knew something about computers or technology or someone that I could kind of talk to and be like, how does this work? And I think having those conversations and being kind of like open about interests means that people will come out of the woodwork you don't even know exist. Like the way that I got my job, I consider myself so lucky. Like fresh faced, straight out of uni, had no idea where to start. And I'd spoken to lecturers and stuff like that, which I'd say they're such a great resource to talk to because they know a little bit. And I was saying, okay, so what would my career role be? Like, what would it be called? And I'd narrowed it down to being either a QA, which is what I am, design, which I didn't think I had quite the right background for, or being a front-end developer and actually creating the user interface for people to see. And then I got out of uni and I was like, this whole job search thing is so mind-blowingly overwhelming. I don't even know where to start. And I just mentioned, hey, you know, one of the things that I'm planning to do this year is find a job. And one of my friends from a completely unrelated hobby came in and said, what job are you after? And it turned out that she's a QA, gave me as a reference to come in and apply to join at her company, and I got it. And that was the cinema company. It was quite a big company as well. It was a bit different from what I'd experienced at university. All of a sudden it was like all of these people, like 400 all working together. And I'd say what I learned from that is that it's, as cheesy as it sounds, it's those connections that really count, and having some mentor to kind of grow all those questions and kind of support any interest that's there. And then just having people to turn to say, I've got to a point where I've kind of achieved everything that I thought of, and now I just don't really know how to do the next step. How do I do it? And then having people who know how to do that just coming in and saying, it's all good, we got you, this is what you should do.
Wow. Do you have any tips on making those connections or networking the way that you did?
Yeah, I'd say networking is quite a scary word, but really it's just kind of talking to people and just saying, these are my interests. And almost invariably there was someone in the room who said, you know what, mine too. And I think when I got to that point of having got to uni, talking to lecturers and saying, there's such a broad amount covered in this course, but I really, really like this one part of it. If I wanted to have a job in this, what would the job title be? What should I look for? What should I do to get there? And just kind of talking to people who know already, and in order to find those people, maybe asking, just sort of like, hey, I've got this, how do I get here? If I want to do this, who would I need to talk to? Starting those conversations, and even just talking to people kind of counts as networking. Like, as I said, with that person from the hobby who I didn't even know she was a QA, I just happened to mention on Facebook, she kind of did like a, hey friends, what's your top 3 things for this year? And I was like, number 1, get a job. I didn't even know that she was in the industry or a good person to talk to. I just put it out there, and the right people kind of responded to me and said, hey, you've sort of announced this, and this is what you're looking for, and we know all the contacts, and we can share them with you, and we can kind of help you with it. So I think there's a good deal of sort of relying on people who've come before to sort of guide the way a little bit.
Wow, that is so great. Everything just fell into place. That is awesome.
I'm so mind blown. I still can't believe exactly how it happened. Because it was kind of like the first place that got back to me was the one that I was referred to. The first place that hired me was that same place, and they had like a really strict interview process. They had tests, they had all sorts of things that are a little bit mind-boggling to look back at it. And I now kind of realize I just went into it with a, you know what, if I get the job, I'll be so excited. If I don't get the job, it's my first interview, it might happen. And I'd already sent out hundreds of applications at that point. And that was just the first one that got back to me. And as kind of scary as it was, they ended up saying that I did really well in the tests, and they placed me with a really, really good team. They had me come back for a few extra interviews just to make sure that they were going to place me with the right people. And even though I don't work there anymore, I'm still friends with them. So that whole interview process seemed scary at the time, but now looking back, I realize it was all for a good reason. They're actually trying to place me in the right place. They're making sure my skills lined up. And I guess kind of like going into that sort of thing with a really sort of open mind of, especially if it's your first interview, it's just kind of, hey, this is all practice. This is practice for the next interview. This is learning the right questions to ask, the right questions to answer, all of those things.
So how did you prepare for that? Like the interview and the testing, how did that go?
So much Google.
A lot to Google.
Yeah. I Googled if I were interviewing someone for a junior QA position, what would I ask? And then for the tests, they told me what they were called. One was a comprehension test, and one was, I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it's essentially pattern finding. And there's nothing like a difficult test to make you doubt. It's like I went into it, I was like, I've got this, you know, I write books, I've got this whole reading comprehension thing down, and I came out of it like, oh my goodness, I don't know anything. And then I think going into the future, there'll be more tests that are kind of more related to the area. So for example, maybe kind of like making automation and how I go about doing that. But right at that junior level, they're not expecting people to know everything. They're not expecting people to kind of come in there with all the knowledge already. There's a lot of guidance involved as well.
Oh, that's good to know, because it does seem like you just have to be on top of everything to get this role. But if you're learning on the job, that does seem so helpful, and maybe somebody else can take the jump and try to apply as well.
And there's so much to be said for coming into it with the right attitude of just saying, hey, you know, I don't actually know this yet, but I'd be willing to learn. These are some other things that I've learned like really quickly, and I'm so excited to learn new things and have that apply to the job. And just coming in with that attitude of not necessarily needing to know everything in advance, but being willing to kind of learn new things as part of the job. That's what most jobs involve, is kind of learning something new. Like when I joined at Action Step, it was all like a completely different system. There was so much learning involved.
Was that a difficult change, going from that original company to Action Step?
Yeah, that is actually definitely worth mentioning. I'd been working at the previous company for a year and a half, and I reached the point where I was quite confident in that product. But when it came time for me to start at Action Step, I was going, well, I know there's one product,
Uh-huh.
But this is completely new. It's like such a broad, customizable system, and all of a sudden there's just like all of this stuff to learn. So
Yeah.
it was most of all exciting, but
Okay.
also a little bit overwhelming in that I didn't have any of that knowledge. I didn't feel like I could share knowledge all of a sudden.
Okay.
But I already had that framework that I could build off, and I sort of went, okay, well, I've kind of like learned a system once before, let's do it. Let's kind of, you know,
And you can do
spend
it
a few
again.
days just absorbing information.
Mm-hmm. Did you use any of your connection or networking to get the role at Action Step?
Actually, no. Action Step was one that I just took a big list of applicable companies and I said, okay, I'm going to apply for this one. I'm going to apply for this one. I'm going to apply for this one. Oh, I really like the look of that one. I'm going to apply for it. Let's just apply for that one. Apply for this one. And it was about 3 months into my job hunting search before I got a call back from Action Step. And I was in talks with a couple of other companies, kind of negotiating and sort of having interviews and that sort of thing. And then Action Step came along and it was so good that I had the choice. And I could say, this company is really good location, this company is really good. Like the Action Step people really stood out to me.
Yeah.
And I went, okay, this is the one. I felt like during my second interview, there was just such a good conversation with the team. And during one of my earlier interviews with a different company, I hadn't had that. And I essentially said, hey, I don't think I'll work with you. And they said, that's all right, because we don't think you're the right fit for us as well. And it was almost a very relieving letdown in that I'd already kind of said, I don't think this is the right fit for me. So that's a good point in terms of job hunting. Kind of like once you get to that point, the first job that comes along isn't always the right job.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good point, because it's good about working with the right people too, because you mentioned that first company, you could really learn from everybody around you.
Yeah. And I heard kind of like how they set up their teams, and I thought that wasn't really a way that would work for me so well. And then the actual repertoire that I had with the people there was just not quite the vibe. It was just a little bit flat. We all were lovely people, and we all kind of like had the basic kind of, you know, niceties and all that, but we just didn't quite click. And I think it's so important to sort of reserve that judgment of saying, I'm going to be working with these people for like 8 hours for 5 days a week. I'd better like them.
You want to like them a little, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Outside of your QA role now, what type of hobbies or social organizations are you a part of?
I have so many hobbies. They all come down to kind of like doing something with my hands or storytelling and stuff like that. So a lot of these hobbies I've sort of had since I was young, and I've just kind of expanded them. But I've got drawing, like painting and just sketching, and I recently started drawing digitally as well, which is such a different experience from drawing on paper. It's fun. And then I've also got, I do a lot of acting. I did 6 years of acting classes, and when I went to university, I didn't really have the time to rehearse for lines or kind of like go once a week to places. So I ended up doing live action role play, which some people might know from like TV shows, and it depends on the country as to how well that represents the specific country. But here in New Zealand, it's like a good chunk of acting, a good chunk of having the option to kind of create your own costumes, and a good chunk of storytelling. And I'm all about all three of those things. So I ended up finding a really good community there. And actually, incidentally, it was a person from the laughing community who actually got me my first job, or referred me there.
Nice.
I also really like costume making, like sewing, as well as I've got some leatherworking stuff. You can't see, but it's kind of in that far corner. And then behind me are a few other things. Some of these I made, and they're kind of like combat safe things that look like weapons. So one of them
so those are the items you use for role playing?
Yeah, so
Okay.
the rapier, which you can kind of see, is
Mhm.
quite a fun one, because that one, if you stab it in towards someone, it bends and it doesn't hurt them. And so it's like really contact safe. There's such a safety conscious element to laughing that it's really cool to be able to say, I made my own thing and it's safe enough. And there's a lot of kind of like woodworking involved as well. I've done quite a bit of that. Leather working. And yeah, that's pretty much. Oh, and of course, writing. How can I not mention writing?
You can't forget about writing.
Like, big time passion of mine. And so all of these things together, I don't do them all at once because that would be too overwhelming, but just kind of like fitting them in after work, seeing what I've got the energy for, seeing what I feel like most on the day. And I think it's really nice to be able to sort of step away from the computer and just sort of do something with my hands and give my hands a break, and something that my son can come and join in with too, because it's sort of like right there, and he can kind of like help me make holes and stuff in leather and stuff like that.
Does he have his own little sword too for the role playing, or not yet?
He actually does. And I made him a shield as well for it. Which was, I didn't make the whole shield. I've got a good friend who cut out the shape of it and just sent me the materials, and then I glued them all together and painted it, and I made it look like a shield, following my son's instructions as to what he wanted to do.
I love it. Why do you feel like it's important to have like a hobby outside of your, day-to-day work life?
Yeah, I think for me, and I know people that can do like day-to-day work and then come home and work on a similar project, like within coding and stuff like that. But for me, I need a disconnect from what I do for like 8 hours, and then coming home and just doing something that I can just pour all of my creative energy into, which I think is why I've got such a broad range of what I do. It's all just kind of different ways of exploring my creativity.
Yeah.
And I think for me, just being able to sort of step aside from, while I have got a lot of sort of, leeway in how I do things at work, and I've got a lot of sort of like creative thinking with coming up with test cases and writing them down and writing documentation and stuff, there's just something so freeing from being able to come home and do something that's completely run by me. So it's like I can do whatever I want to. The only limit is my imagination, quite literally.
Wow, I love it. And you just have so many hobbies. So I just know you keep busy and you have fun.
So much.
Especially since you enjoy your QA role, you enjoy your hobby. So it sounds good.
Yeah, I like to base my life around what I find most fun. And I think it's really important to sort of enjoying what happens day to day as well, as just having fun and finding enjoyment. Like for me, the automation is something that I find so much joy in. And also just seeing other people build things that they put in front of me and they're like, test this. And I'm like, I am all about clicking all the buttons.
That sounds great. You really make me want to get more information about QA. We have to talk later. Let's finish up with one more question. Does your company have any internships or other opportunities that you would like to share?
Yeah, so we don't really have any internships or anything like that, because we tend to do it more as kind of like paid junior roles, where people can sort of come in straight from university and they go straight into a paid position where they can learn all those skills and get up to, as far as they want to take it. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I can only really speak for the New Zealand office, because that's what I've got the most familiarity with, and I've spoken with three of the other offices. But in the New Zealand office, we've recently got, I think it was one new front-end junior, and we've got 2 new junior QAs.
And the junior people are usually people right out of university?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mix. For myself, I was a year and a half in a different job, but before, when I first joined that job, I was hired as a junior and I was straight out of uni. Yeah, so I've got quite a few people who've come and they've done various training at various different universities and institutions and courses and stuff like that. But they don't really have kind of like real world
Hands-on
testing
training.
experience in a company, or just, or coding, or, whatever's relevant to their actual profession. So it's generally how it works.
Okay, great. But having those junior roles sound great, because I always thought junior still meant you need 3 years of experience, then you can come. But knowing that junior means that, hey, we're willing to work with you, that's good to know.
Yeah, and I think the major thing is just being upfront about, hey, I've done these things in a classroom environment, I've done assignments on it, I've done this, or I might have done like projects outside of the classroom, which is what I did before my first job. I had 3 different projects that I showed. One of them was actually part of a course, and we were allowed to show that to prospective employers and stuff like that. And then I had a couple of other ones that I didn't actually end up finishing them, but I started them. People could see where they were going. They could see the ideas behind it, and they could see that I kind of had that passion to learn and passion to sort of do stuff, which I think was really important. But I didn't have any kind of like experience within the testing or QA sector at that point.
Did you show them all 3 of those projects?
Yeah, I put links to them. So I put them in a place where they could access it via link. And I just said, here are 3 of my projects that you can look at. And they ended up looking at all 3 of them, and they wanted to talk to me about what my vision was for kind of completing some of them. And they wanted to talk to me about the tools that I used for another one.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Jasmine. I think that's all the questions I have so far, but it has been so great talking to you, having you on GiSTEM, and you sharing all your career journey and challenges. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It has been so good to be here.
We hope to see you soon. So I'm just gonna, I'm Deja Shabazz. I am the Head of Technology and the Secretary for GiSTEM. This is our last GiSTEM chat for the 2021 year. Be on the lookout for our event schedule for 2022. This Saturday, December the 11th, we will be at the Churchill Holiday Market. So please come out and visit us. If you need some information on that, you will see it on our Facebook page and most likely our GiSTEM website as well. We appreciate our guests for taking the time to speak with us and our viewers for tuning in. If you haven't already, please follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter at GiSTEM Inc. If you have any questions or would like more information about our organization, please review our website at www.gisteminc.org or contact us by email at gisteminc@gmail.com. We cannot wait to see you at the next GiSTEM chat next year, and have an excellent remainder of your day. Also, don't forget, it's still giving season. So if you would like to donate to GiSTEM, please do so. Thank you and have a great holiday, and thanks for being here. Bye.